Alright, so... I guess I'll just tell this in chronological order. So, first off, I heard from the realtor. They contacted the people I bought the house from and acted like they were just curious if they'd had any poor experiences with the house. The owners told them they just didn't really feel that the neighborhood suited them. There were no ghostly experiences or anything like that. I asked that my realtor give my number to them, but I haven't heard from them. However, I did a little digging, and here's what I know. So the house was built by a family around 150 years ago. Like I said, it's an old area. So the family that built it lived in it, passed it down until the last few members died out. Just no one had any kids, so the bank took ownership. I found all this out through public record, but I don't really know the details of the sale to my parents. I assume that they must have bought it from, the bank. My buddy came over around 5 after work, and I basically gave him a rundown of everything I knew so far. He agreed for the most part, but I could tell that he thought it was some kind of prank that I was pulling. I asked him to bring over some climbing stuff, and even though he didn't know why I wanted him to, he came through. One of the things he brought was a little flashlight, and he said the first thing to do was lower something brighter than a glow stick in there. The rope was about 90 feet, and he got just about 2/3 of it in before it started pulling to the left. The tunnel was curving, like a spiral. At least that's the best way I can describe it. It reminds me of how a magnet on a string acts when it's being attracted to another one. The light also flickered, and we thought that it might go out, but it was tougher than the other lights, and it stayed on. By that point, my buddy was 100% in agreement. That shit was really not normal. I must explain why the glow sticks never hit the bottom. They kind of got sucked into and beyond that curve. We lowered the light in as far as we could and lost sight of it. By our estimate, the curve became really noticeable about 75 feet down. I was all for going down right away, but my buddy was smarter than me, and instead, he insisted that we do a few more checks. He sort of rigged up a system that was tied to one of the bigger beams and attached a harness to it. He was very insistent on it being just a piece of shit thing that would never be as totally safe, but I have to admit, my adrenaline was going and I needed to know what was in there. He got the thing all rigged up, but when I asked for the harness, he wouldn't give it to me. I said, give me the damn thing, and he refused. He kept saying, no, it's not safe, I'm the only one trained to do this. All that kind of stuff. And I tried to be respectful about it, but we started arguing pretty hard, and then he threatened to take his entire setup down and out, and I was very reluctant to agree to let him go down first to check it out. He put on some kind of respirator thing, like I've seen construction workers wear, and he got himself all rigged up in the harness. He's I guess a bigger dude, so it was a tight fucking fit for him under that roof. So much so that I thought that he maybe wasn't going to fit at all. But he managed to cram himself inside and test his weight down in that ladder. It was fine, totally solid, and he started down with me holding a really big camping flashlight to give him as much light as possible. Everything was fine until he got about 30 feet down. We'd been talking, and then suddenly his voice cut off. It scared the shit out of me. I could see him, but it was like he was behind a wall, no sound at all. And afterward, he said that he couldn't hear me either, and he came back up, calling the whole time. From my end, he was totally silent until a very specific height, when suddenly I could hear him again. We narrowed it down to just about where we figured the basement would be, 32 feet, give or take, which means that this tunnel is going well below the basement. He got almost triple that before he had to stop and come back up. His voice was really shaky. He said it's fucking cold down there. I didn't really realize what he meant at the time, so I just asked if he was going to stop. First he said no, but then he went back down, and it seemed like he got stuck going around that curve. He tried a few different ways, but because of the angle, he didn't have enough clearance. The tunnel doesn't exactly get narrower, but my friend was having some trouble anyway. I mean, he's a big fucking dude, and for some reason just couldn't seem to get the right angle to make that curve. It seemed like it took him forever to get back up. We regrouped. He said at that specific point, a little over 30 feet down, it was like going into ice water. Freezing cold, no sound. He couldn't even really hear himself. He was super muffled. He said it wasn't like anything he'd ever experienced before, and did I really want to go down there? Of course I said yes. And he got me all strapped in the harness. I'm small, kind of runs in my family, so I had no problem getting down inside. Now, the ladder's made of the same wood as the rest of the house. and it's basically just blocks of wood hammered into the side. As you go down, the curve is very noticeable. Much more so than if you were just looking at it. At the point where you hit the basement, the paneling gives way to dirt, which shores up some of the more occasional planks. At around the same point, you go through that barrier, and it's shocking to the system. It takes your breath away. There's also a pressure change. My ears popped really painfully. And since I was going down feet first, I couldn't really see what was below me. I felt the curve more than saw it. I gave my friend a thumbs up and started the turn. I went down for over 5 minutes, guys. I timed it. Now, admittedly, I was going slow, but I can't even express how wrong it felt just to keep going down into this fucking endless hole. There was a point where I really seriously started getting scared that I was never going to find the end of this thing. It was that long. And then, all of a sudden, I went to take another step and my foot landed on something that rolled under me, and it almost sent me on my ass. I kicked it all aside and got my feet under me. Solid ground. Cold through my shoes. I pointed the smaller flashlight at the ground. The glow sticks were still glowing, and farther away in what was basically a closet-sized room. The marbles. Holy shit. The room is small, like I said, and open at one end where it appears to continue downward in that same circular way. There's no natural light, and the air is incredibly cold. I only spent a few minutes down there, but I was frozen by the time I left, which was quickly. I was nervous, being down too long without my friend knowing what was going on. Needless to say, he was pissed that he couldn't get in, but neither of us was willing to call it quits. Communication down there was an issue, though, since after a few failed attempts at my calling from the room, we concluded that electronics didn't seem to like working down there. We decided we'd do things on a time limit instead. I'd go down for half an hour at the most and come right back up when time was up. If I didn't show, he'd call the cops. He wasn't crazy on it, but by then he was dying to know what it was, just as much as me. In total, I spent about 2 hours down in what I just started thinking of as a sub-basement. The walls were some kind of gray rock, they were smooth, there was no markings or seams, and completely dark, no light of any kind. I didn't have the balls to turn off my light to verify that, though. The ground is dirt. There's no sign of prior traffic except a place that was scuffed by the edge of the ladder, near where my own marks were. The hallway leading down out of the room is wider than the tunnel coming down. I followed that for a ways, but it seemed like the space was getting wider. I didn't want to risk getting lost. Everything looks the same down there. The entire time I was going down this hallway, farther into the ground, it kept getting colder and colder. The walls were almost painful to touch. My nose hairs were freezing together. And about then is when I turned back. The second time, though, I noticed something that I'd missed coming in. It was lying out of my line of sight near the right wall. It was something green. A piece of a string of Christmas tree lights. It must have fallen off when I lowered it and gotten stuck to my shoe. I didn't know how else it could have gotten there. Up top, I was so cold my buddy had to help me out. I had no use of my hands. It was like I'd been in a deep freezer. I got into the shower. I stayed there for almost an hour trying to warm up. My buddy agreed to stay the night in case I needed help or something. He has tomorrow off, and I've agreed to wait until he comes over to do anything else. See, I'm gonna buy some heavy winter gear to take down there with me, as well as some fishing line and chalk to mark my way. I'm also bringing a tape measure and some paper, so I can draw out what this place looks like roughly. If there's anything else I should bring, let me know. I don't really know what else to say about it. It's beyond strange, impossible. See, I don't know what to think. I had no idea this thing was under my house. I kind of want to know why it's there. There was zero record of anyone even knowing about it. I'm going to look around in the attic to see if maybe there's stuff up there from the previous owners. Something that they forgot or something. I'm feeling really sick today for some reason though, so I'm not feeling up to too much. I'll do it tomorrow. First thing. Hey there everyone who's listening on YouTube, or those of you who are listening on the podcast. It's me, MrCreepyPasta, and before you head out for the night, I just wanted to let you know about a couple of things. Without you, the show doesn't take place. So, if you guys would like to support the show, or if you guys would like to get your hands on a couple of cool little things whenever new things come out, check out patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta, and any support that you guys show, I really appreciate. For everyone who's already donated to the Patreon, I really appreciate it. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for that. If you guys are looking for more CreepyPasta Storytime, there's a new video that's uploaded to this channel or uploaded to the podcast every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday now. You can be able to get more from me at facebook.com/MrCreepyPasta or on Twitter at MrCreepyPasta and then the number 0. Thanks so much for listening, kids, and for your support. And sweet dreams.